call coming to you from Super Summit. SuperOps is excited to put on another presentation for you that hopefully will enhance your ability to run your business, manage your day-to-day affairs, or improve your lifestyle at home, depending on how you take the advice. So I am here today with Heather Johnson, and Heather with, I love this name, Gozynta. Is it?
Almost, Gozynta, Gozynta.
You say it much better. You have the pretty smile that makes it work. So, all right, well, I'm not going to struggle through names much longer. Thank you for having an easy to pronounce Heather Johnson name. That helped. Got me past my usual first hurdle. But glad to have you here. Thank you for taking time out. Thank you for everybody watching this podcast or who've downloaded it to take some time out to improve your business and work on it, not just in it. So, Heather, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about an issue that people like to avoid, having difficult conversations or impossible conversations. I mean, who enjoys having a nice, uncomfy, difficult conversation with anyone at work, at home,
Right.
with friends? No one likes that.
Okay. Well, I'll let you just dive on in and tell us about it. I'm not a conflict avoider, but nobody likes having difficult conversations. It's something I don't try to avoid, but something I don't run to. So tell us, what do we need to learn?
Yeah. So as you said, sometimes we do avoid these difficult conversations. Sometimes we struggle through them. And when we avoid difficult conversations, they end up turning into a disaster with no way out. We look back and say, oh, I probably should have done something different. I should have said something in advance, that you're sitting there at night, like going through all of the possible scenarios that maybe would have made the outcome different.
Wasn't there an entire Seinfeld episode based on George wanting to, what he should have said? All right.
Yes, I think you're right. I got to pull that one up because yes, you're right. Yeah, I mean, we struggle with that, and we have that loop all the time of, oh, I should have done this different, and maybe it's my fault. And it's always good when dealing with employees or any of those situations to be introspective and see how we can change, because we're all works in progress. So first, why do I know something about this? Why should you listen to me? Well, I've had a lot of difficult conversations in my time, and I've made a ton of mistakes. I've had a lot of the nights like just sitting at home thinking, what should I have done differently? But the important thing is I've learned through each one, and I have some tips to share, because why reinvent the wheel? You might as well learn from my mistakes. So who am I? I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of Gozynta. We are the creators of Gozynta Mobius, which is an accounting integration, and Tixt, which is a texting to ticket integration. We also have some coaching tools as well. I'm also the vice president and committee liaison for the National Society of IT Service Providers. If you are an MSP that is not a member, do become a member. This is a proactive way to be involved with potential legislation, which is a sure thing that it will be coming, and we want to take an active role in shaping that so that it is for the health of MSPs. Prior to coming to the tech world, I was a director of human resources. So you can see how many of those difficult conversations I would have had in my time. I was also the senior leadership at Hartford International University of Religion and Peace. In 2015 and 16, I was a co-organizer of an interfaith and community service campus challenge that was commissioned by President Obama with the White House, the Department of Education, and Georgetown University. And I have served several years as a business consultant, giving difficult information to businesses that need to hear it so that they can grow and become better. So what are you going to learn today? To prevent difficult conversations, you need to set clear expectations and goals with measurable outcomes whenever possible. Think about it, what success is for one person versus another person can be widely different. So if you have measurable outcomes that you can both agree upon, because they're numbers, 3 is 3. If you expect someone to have 75% positive interactions with customers, and that might be low or high, but if that's what your goal is, that is something that you can agree on. So we're going to look at difficult conversation prevention, handling having small difficult conversations routinely. These are one-on-ones, addressing things as they happen. From now on, I'll be talking about 101s and I'll call them 03s in case I start saying that and you wonder where that's coming from, but one-on-one 03s. The spinach on your tooth conversation, we'll be using that, and quarterly reviews with those measurable goals. We'll be looking at how to handle an impossible conversation, because sometimes they are inevitable, even if you're doing these small, difficult conversations. We'll be looking at self-care after an impossible conversation, because so many times, we look at the mechanics of having conversations, but those are hurtful and painful for you as well. And it's very important for your mental health to take time and absorb those and take care of yourself. And then if we have time, we're going to create a safe space for employees to have difficult conversations with you, because yes, having good interactions both ways is really important, and your employees need to feel comfortable to be able to bring difficult things to you, and you need to give them the guidance to do that. So you can use many of these tips with customers, vendors, even outside of work. I don't know if I suggest having an 03 scheduled with your kids or your wife, but it might work for you. I don't know. But you should train all of your managers to use this method all the time so you can keep your expectations clear company-wide.
Great.
So here, Mark, did you have a
No, I said
comment on
great.
that?
It's a good topic. Thank you.
Super. Hopefully it's helpful to a lot of people. We're going to go, here's our first section, and this is the preventing the difficult conversation section. Replacing an employee costs up to 33% of their salary. This was cited in Forbes. And so if that person was making $45,000, it would cost the company $15,000 per person to replace them. That's not only recruiting fees, but all the costs of hiring, the months of lost work while trying to find the next hire, and then the things that are not as measurable, as you have other employees trying to take the burden of the work onto themselves and train the new person. That's bringing morale down. So keeping your current employees not only is better for the bottom line, but it also makes for a much more fun work environment. Nobody likes to have employee turnover. It's no fun. People are your best asset. If you have an A team and everyone is pulling in the same direction, there is nothing you can't do. But sometimes you may not have the right person, or you may have the right person, but not be giving a clear message on what the expectations for the role are. So you're preventing them from being able to be successful. So we're looking at Lizzie's expectations. This is Lizzie's welcome letter. And this was given to her as a new employee the first day that she arrived. So having this for every single role in your company is crucial to avoid impossible conversations. They should be developed and given during the hiring process on the first day. Nobody enjoys applying for a job and thinking they're going to be doing this, and then they find out that they're actually going to be doing a totally different job that they weren't really thinking they were excited about. So if you don't have clear expectations for all your jobs, don't worry, it's never too late. Write expectations for each role in your company, present them to each department to work with them for feedback when it's complete. And it's a working document. This is a living document. It's never you do one for this position. If it's tech support and you do one, that's going to change. So you need to bring that out every year, probably at employee reviews, and see how has this changed? What could be put into this to make it more clear? And have your employees sign off on it, or use a program that tracks them coming back into the document. We use Confluence for this, and I can see every time that Lizzie comes into this and starts working through those links that have the 90-day milestones, and I see that she's done that and she's checked off the information for her first day. I see when she's done this, so I can see if she's off track, and I can reach out and say, all right, I see that you're not going back to your document again. What can I do to help you? Especially helpful if you're remote, like we are, to make sure things are on track. So why is this important? So you've hired George from operations for a new position. You think he's going to streamline your service desk, but he believes he's supposed to keep things status quo. And, you know, he thinks you have a good system. He doesn't want to change anything, which is often very good advice. Let's see how it's done and then make changes later. But you wanted him to jump right in and streamline. You hated how things were being done. So, you know, you see in 3 months, you're starting to get frustrated because the service desk isn't running more efficiently. George is like picking up on that. He's confused. He feels like he's doing a good job. He was being respectful to finding out what was done by his predecessor and continuing along that path to build the trust of his coworkers. And he senses your frustration and starts to feel bad about the job he's doing. His stress, of course, is going to start to spill over onto your support team members as he presses them to be faster with their current inefficient routines. And there begins to be some backlash. The support team starts to murmur when George walks in, and he ends up giving up. He comes into your office, he quits on the spot. You explain your position, but at this point, it's too late. You know, he could have made that board more efficient, but he didn't realize that was what he was supposed to do. He didn't know he was supposed to come in and overhaul the whole process. But at this point, he doesn't even have the team's respect. So he couldn't even save that process in the way that he could have before. So at Gozynta, as I said, we're a remote company. So we must be very clear on as much as possible and have written references for our employees to go back to review as needed. We are here for those questions and we talk through those, but we also, as questions are raised, incorporate those into documentation to be as straightforward as possible. I also often hear when I talk about this that people will say, well, my employees use common sense. Like, I don't need to write all of this down. There is no common sense. I can't stress this enough. I've been doing this a long time. I love people. I love managing people, but there is no common sense. If there is a way you want to have things done, have it detailed, right down to the letter and what you want to be done and the way you would like it done. It's really important. You have those expectations set, and then they will get there. But don't assume, oh, well, they'll just figure it out. I mean, it's obvious. They just need to do this. It might not be obvious. So make it as clear as possible to make them as successful as possible. So as I mentioned, we looked at Lizzie's onboarding information, and we have this onboarding document. This clicks in a little bit more. When we looked at Lizzie's earlier, it had the blue links, but when she clicks into these blue links, this has more details on what she's supposed to do. You can see general guidelines. That's for all of our employees. Her first day setup, getting her systems set up, and those link into specific information as to what she needs to do to get her equipment set up, how to start her training. This is what she has to do for her first week. And these are her 90-day goals and expectations. At Gozynta and in many companies, there's a 3-month probationary period, and there's certain expectations that have to be met. And so we provide a goal to get there, because if they don't get there, if they don't reach that goal, it can't be a surprise what you get to 90 days and say, oh, it's not working out. And they look at you blinking saying, why is it not working out? I thought I was doing really good. No, I mean, you have to hit these things. So having exactly what they need to achieve at 90 days is important. and then giving them the tools to get there. So as I mentioned, having goals, super important. Having SMART goals is even more important. So what is SMART? Specific. Make those goals very specific and narrow. That makes it easier. You know, if it's just make things work better, that's really, really hard to achieve. What one person thinks might make things work better might not be the same for somebody else. Make them measurable. Define what evidence will prove progress. What is success? If somebody just thinks, wow, I'm doing better than the last person, that might be success to them, where you're looking for them to have success be up here because you've invested much more in this employee. Have it be attainable. Of course, we don't want goals that are impossible to reach, because that's just frustration right there. Make sure that they're relevant. They should align with, you know, there's those long-term objectives that you're trying to get to, but these should be mini goals so you can get there. It's your way to get there. And make sure that they're time-based. There should be a date that they should be done by, so that they can understand, okay, this is what is being expected of me, and I need to prioritize to get there. I always like to have this. This is an example of a job description. You should have a job description for every employee, and that should be in their HR file, whether it be in print or it be electronic. I'm not going in depth into this here, because filing for this is different by state, but there are also some federal requirements. So always be sure. I'm surprised at how many MSPs that I talk to that aren't meeting those basic reporting requirements. And if you are ever audited, you don't want to be really quickly like writing job descriptions and putting them in folders. So do try to aim to get to having job descriptions for all of your positions. Whenever possible, we have links to procedures that employees must follow for the tasks. I've come across this many times. This is an example of adding expenses into QuickBooks Online. We have a way that we want them to be inputted in here. So just telling an employee, please add expenses into QuickBooks Online, they might not include the information that we want to have in there. So we make that very clear and bulleted, and we ask the employees to take it out every time. So if something does change, that they can update that document. That's super important, because if an employee goes to a different position, if they're out sick, anybody can come in here and take over that task. Really helpful side note that doesn't really have to do with difficult conversations, but is very, very helpful if you have procedures that are clear enough that anybody can follow. So why is this important? When it comes to difficult conversations, if you don't have procedures, and as I mentioned, the invoices are being entered into manage in a way you don't like, you can either go in and change it yourself and tell the employee and future employees how to do it correctly, or put it in that procedure and have them follow it. Once it's in there and everybody knows that they must follow the procedure, if it's done wrong, you can immediately mention it as a spinach in your tooth conversation, which I'll mention in a little bit, or brought up in their one-on-one meetings. And then, you know, it's clearly there. You can say, remember, you know, did you follow this procedure because you missed this step? And it's not like, oh, I never knew that I was supposed to do that. So it makes it a little bit easier to discuss. So you have your expectations set, your procedures where you want them. Now you need to be talking to your reports regularly to do course correction. I usually hear this in response, my employees are fine. I only have meetings with them when they need something. But quiet doesn't mean they are fine. It means something could be wrong. Keep this in mind for your customers too. If a customer is quiet, it doesn't mean that things are fine. Check in with them. So going back to difficult conversations, let's take an example. Johnny is the kindest employee you can imagine, but he isn't great at project management. When you see him, you want to give him some pointers and guidance on how to get better, but he's just so lovely and he smiles and everybody loves him. The customer thinks he's the greatest. So, what's the harm? You have some issues, but whatever. You've tried to have conversations, but he looks at you with those innocent eyes, and it seems like you'd be like kicking a puppy if you said anything to him about his job performance. But in the meantime, his coworkers keep picking up the slack for him because, of course, they love him too, and they don't want to see him lose his job. But this leads them to feel overworked, and they start to feel resentful and start dropping things on their end. Johnny, of course, isn't making any progress since he has no clue that he isn't doing well. So he's not even like investing in trying to get himself to reach higher, but he is picking up on the tension with his coworkers, and his coworkers eventually approach you pretty upset that they are so overworked, and now you have a morale issue. Johnny isn't doing his part anyway, and you have to talk to Johnny, but by this point he has hurt feelings and it's too late to fix. There's a morale issue among your team. Johnny decides to leave. He actually then also takes a couple customers with him. And if you had worked on those issues all along, Johnny might have been one of your A team, but without guidance, he crashed and burned. So it's actually, as difficult as conversations feel, you're doing them a favor, because if you're quiet and you don't say anything, they don't have the opportunity to improve. So there are 3 wonderful tools to ensure communication and improvements, and make sure they're constantly being monitored and improved. So the first one is a spinach in the tooth conversation. So this is something, if you see something more minor, it's something like not following a written procedure, not entering an expense correctly, something pretty minor that you can just address right at the moment. That's a spinach in the tooth conversation. What do I mean by that? Suppose your friend was talking to you and had a big piece of spinach on their front tooth. You would say pretty comfortably and without judgment, "Oh, you have a little spinach on your tooth." It's a helpful phrase, minor course correction, no judgment. I mean, you wouldn't say, "Hey, dirty person, you have a piece of spinach on your tooth." You wouldn't say that. You would just say, "Hey, you got something right here. It's just helpful. It gets them back on track." If an employee didn't follow a procedure correctly, you would want to give that correction in the same helpful tone as helping that friend with spinach. There should be no anger, no judgment. And if you're ever feeling a little twinge of anger, just go breathe a little bit before you talk, and just say, "You're just a bit of help. I think you missed a step in that procedure. Can you go through that again and ensure you have everything correct?" Don't say what's wrong, have them figure it out, but have them check that out again. If you're finding you seem to be giving a lot of spinach on the tooth reminders, it may be time for it to be a topic on your upcoming O3 meeting. So a one-on-one meeting, an O3 meeting, I like to have these once a week, 30 minutes. This is a time to talk about improving your direct reports and do it company-wide. Always prepare for this meeting. One of my pet peeves when I've had a report give me O3s is that, they're running into it just saying, "Hey, what do you need? What do you want?" And it's like, "Oh, wait, no, take some time." You want to make that employee feel like you care about them, you're working and you're thinking about things that have to happen. Don't cancel this meeting, like make it a top priority, show your employees they are essential and this time is important. What I'm showing is how I like to set up my O3s. We use Asana for this because it's great to then assign it as a task to them to do later. If you don't know Asana, definitely check it out. This just comes up as a recurring template, so I can go through each week and look at some things that I might need to bring up. This is Faith's O3 meeting, and at her last review, and she does know, she actually made the slide deck, so does know that we're looking at her reviews and her O3s. But at her last review, her quarterly goal was to work on her time management. And I'll talk about quarterly reviews in a little bit, but this is a time that she shares what she has learned from the resources we provide her for quarterly review and how challenges uh, she has had during the week. And it's important to have your employees find something that's a win, even in a bad week, find something to celebrate. I also ask in each meeting if there is something I can do to better help you. Communication needs to be open in both ways. And although it can be hard to hear, it is very beneficial for your employees to give you information on ways you can better communicate or manage. I actually feel terrific when my employees feel comfortable telling me something I need to work on. Do I like to hear that I'm not perfect? No, but nobody's perfect. But I do feel great that they trust me enough to open up, and that is huge. So try to, when an employee open up, take it as a compliment that you have fostered a goal of trust.
I notice enough managers don't do that. I like to, in my one-on-ones, invite employees to give me some feedback. And it's as simple as opening the door for them and asking a question. What can I do to be a better boss, a better leader, a better coach? Is there anything I can start doing or stop doing, do more of or do less of? And if they don't have at least one thing that I really question the validity of the conversation.
It's true. Yes, you're right. You're right. It's important, and honoring and respecting what they have to say makes them feel more of a part of what they're doing instead of just being there just to clock in and clock out. So
They may not be right, but their perception is real, and I need to create an environment where they can trust me enough to share that. And I think every manager struggles at some level with that kind of undertaking.
Yeah, oh, it's hard to open yourself up. It really is. And I know at times that, I always schedule in a breath once we like to say here, are you ready for some feedback? Because it gets us in the mind of like, okay, yeah, okay. And then take that breath and be like, okay, I'm going to sit with that and figure out, yeah, it doesn't mean that it's always right because they might be missing some information. And sometimes it could be spot on and just really, really hard to hear.
Very true.
Yeah. And, important to, not be defensive because you can quickly lose trust. If you are like, no, that's not it at all, then they're going to be like, oh, I think I am not going to answer that question next time. So it's a really good moment to shine and learn for sure for managers. So if your employee has a spinach on the tooth topic, putting that, and it seems to be recurring, put it on that agenda. So we're going to talk about let's notice this state. So it's kind of moved up from a spinach on the tooth, and we need to kind of come up with why does this keep happening? So if Faith hadn't been following a procedure many times, and I kept telling her when I saw it, I would put in a topic on the O3 about following procedures. Then I would be very direct, but not angry, and say, I've noticed that you are having some troubles following this procedure. How can I help you with this? And then listen. You may find that there may be a software issue that prevents them from having access to a certain step. They may tell you that they have so many tasks that they are constantly working late. They're having problems at home now, and they just have too many things to do, and that's where things are sliding. They may not be feeling well, or their pet may have just died. They may not like procedures, but in your environment, that might not be an option. Everyone must follow them. So explaining the importance of the procedures and why it's required to follow them might be helpful. Document the answer and the solution with those SMART goals in your minutes to the O3 and send that to the employee. And then keep a copy of that and keep working on that. That should come back in the next O3. So you can look again and say, how is this coming? Oh, wow, you're doing better on procedures. That's super. And also keep a copy of that in their HR folder. Always important to document, especially when there's issues like this that are recurring. You always want to have a copy of that in their HR file, whether it be in print or electronic. Always document everything, just as I was saying. You can also use read receipts, have employees sign documents, if it's Doc Hub, if it's in person. There will always be times that you tell an employee that you told them something and they will say that you never said that, you never sent it. They may have genuinely forgotten it. I've certainly done that. But good to have documentation that you can resend again and use for your own reference. Document everything, have it signed or sent with read receipts, and save that into the HR folder. Make it a habit. Don't do it at the end of the month or at the end of a year. It's overwhelming. If things ever do turn difficult, because it happens, I know everybody's had it happen, it will be a massive help for you to not be scrambling and have all of the documentation you need in the HR folder. And then at the next O3 meeting, copy the information from the last meeting so you don't miss anything. Readdress items that need to be checked in on, and continue to document in your O3 the progress that they've made. Tool 3 is quarterly reviews with measurable goals. This is the last tool I'm going to talk about here to avoid impossible conversations, and that's the quarterly reviews. As we talked about, we set some goals with Faith. These are more long-term goals, and I definitely like to have these be things where the employee wants to grow. Faith has been looking at doing some more information, more research into coding directly. UX design, and I try to give her the path, whether it be taking some outside courses or some books, and help her reach that goal. And then also, she's looking at time management, so I gave her some books and resources to figure out time management. Why not annual reviews? Because I know a lot of people probably are like, I just do annual reviews. Well, if you just talk to your employees once per year, you are missing a lot of opportunity for professional development and course correction. We've all done the annual reviews, I bet. Annual reviews happen. We get some goals for the upcoming years. We forget about our goals. We schedule the next annual review, and the day before we say, oh boy, I don't even know what my last year's goals were. And we go take out the thing, and then we try to complete as many goals the day before your next review. Why bother? I mean, that's certainly not what the point is, but having these quarterly reviews where we can set goals and then every week work on them to get the employee where they need to go and fix those course corrections that we need to fix along the way is much more effective. So quarterly reviews should be to address any longstanding issues, check in on where the employee is feeling about their position. Sometimes you might feel like, well, actually, we had an employee that was a developer that decided that they didn't really like developing, and we started working on where else they might fit in better. But if we weren't having those, we wouldn't have found that. See where they see themselves in the future. Where do they want to go? Set goals to address issues or to help employees reach the goals that we mutually agree upon. And as you prepare for your quarterly reviews, you now have lots of documentation on the company's expectations for this employee. You have their expectations documents from hiring or document creation date. You have your O3s from the quarter that you can look through to see any issues and ensure they've been resolved. And always find something to celebrate in those quarterly reviews. I also set this up as a form that the employee fills out for self-reflection. I send this a few weeks before their review, and once they submit it, I go through the information I have from their job expectations, job descriptions, O3s, their goals and challenges from their self-assessments. It sounds like a lot, but it's, about an hour of prep. I figure out talking points for a review and write them down. And none of these things should be new. That's what's really great, is having these constant conversations. There should be no surprise in quarterly reviews. Um, um, but whether old news or new, have concrete examples wherever possible to explain what you want to improve. Really spend time on this. A way to avoid embarrassment is by spending a bit of time before, because, you know, I have come into these things certain that the employee knew that there was an issue with them barking at customers because it seemed like common sense. But remember what I told you, there's no such thing as common sense. For example, I had an employee that was always grumpy and condescending. When I mentioned that we needed to work on fixing this, they were shocked and said, "Give me one example." I just assumed this person knew they were grumpy and condescending. So, I scrambled to think of one, but it did knock me off my feet. And that's not how we want to come into these conversations. We want to have concrete examples so that it goes smoother. And then come up with a solution to fix the issue, that you include them in so they have that buy-in. And as before, document it all, send it to the employee, and have them sign it so that you know that they understand. Now, for the employees' aspirations within the company, that is important as well. It's not solving an immediate problem, but it prevents the employee from possibly leaving because they don't see any way to move up and advance. I've worked with managers who either assume that their employees don't want to move up and don't help them grow, hence they find a path elsewhere. Or I've seen managers think someone wants to be a manager and pushes them into tasks they don't want to be doing. So they end up leaving because they don't want the pressure of more responsibility. It's essential to listen to your employees and what they say and provide a path to success for them. I have a Cracker Jack employee who wants to be a C-level. So we chose different goals each quarter. She takes courses, read books, trains with me, and we chart her progress each week in her O3. That keeps her goals on track and not forgotten about in a desk drawer, and we celebrate each achievement she makes. Now, if you have an employee that you don't think would succeed in a higher spot in the company, that is another difficult conversation, but it's better to have it sooner than later. So if you have someone reach out to you and say, "I am planning to be a C-level here, I'm planning to lead this department," you need to explain precisely why you don't think that they're ready for that. Not just, "Oh, that's great, golly gee, maybe someday," but you aren't really intending on giving that position. Tell them why. If it's that they're not very good at goal setting, say, "I don't think you'd be a good manager because from what I'm seeing, you don't seem to be good at goal setting." They may end up surprising you, and it will avoid an impossible conversation later when they try to cash in on that promotion they're thinking they're going to get. And again, remember to document it and send it to the employee with SMART goals on what they would need to achieve to get to a management position. Quarterly reviews are a fantastic tool, so utilize them. Remember, they need to go to the employee after the meeting in their HR folder and implement it into their weekly O3. Don't leave them in a drawer. Use them to get to your team's goals. So we laid all this groundwork and we're proud and happy and feeling great, but I can't guarantee you will never have an impossible conversation. But let me show you how we can take those tools that we just learned and make an impossible conversation easier. So you've onboarded Sally. She has clear onboarding documents with SMART goals and expectations. You've noticed that she never follows any company procedures, which leads to many mistakes and confusion in other departments. You've tried to offer solutions to get her to follow them, yet she still doesn't. You have your quarterly meeting, say that that's her biggest goal moving forward, yet nothing gets better at the O3 is at this point, you need to have an or else talk. I hate these. Ugh. And when this comes in, it's up to you. You may not be able to wait as long as a quarterly meeting, but get everything in writing in advance of the meeting. This is a non-mince conversation, still with no anger. I never say to be angry, always leave your anger somewhere else. You should have a goal that they should reach and maintain for the course of this employee. For Sally, we could say, you need to bring your procedural errors to this month down to 3. If you make 3 a month, your position will be terminated. This level of care must remain going forward and for the next year. If the amount of mistakes rise above 3, we will need to terminate your position. Don't make it friendly. Don't soften it. And that's really hard. But don't say we may need to think about possibly re-looking at your position, because then they're going to say, well, that nice person's never going to fire me. Make it clear. If you don't do this, we will need to terminate your position. Being direct helps both sides, I promise. If there is crying, be sympathetic and listen, but don't back down. If there's anger, listen. Don't be angry back, because realize this is hard for the employee, and fear comes out as anger. Hurt comes out as anger. So be empathetic, sit back, listen. However, both of these reactions should be a little less, since the conversation should not be a surprise. There should be nothing they hear for the first time. Send the follow-up email, have them sign, and of course, put it in their HR folder and schedule the follow-up meeting to check in on those SMART goals. The final conversation. Suppose Sally makes 3 mistakes the next day, or doesn't meet the SMART goals at the end of the scheduled time. Get her termination letter ready that clearly states when her benefits end, how the company will pay her for unused vacation time, how to return equipment, then schedule the meeting. Try to have it at the end of the day. Notify somebody to disconnect her access to her accounts while you are having the discussion. I know it sounds cold, but you don't want an upset employee sending a bulk message saying you were stinky, or worse of all, like you're to all of your customers. So do this even if you don't think you need to. If it's a routine for everyone, it won't cause as hurt feelings as if you just do it for a few. It must be your procedure for everyone. The last conversation should be as to the point as possible. It is to say that you didn't make the goal that we agreed upon, and so the employment is being terminated effective immediately. You don't need to go through all their past wrongs here or what they should have done differently. They feel awful, I promise. They feel awful. Again, be patient, allow space for their emotions, but try to get as quickly through what they need to know in the letter, get to business, cover the bases very clearly. What do they need to know, and what do they need to do next steps? Remember, they aren't in the best place to repeat those steps often, and give them the clear letter that backs that up right there. Self-care after an impossible conversation. As I said, you're not going to feel good. So that's why I say make sure that you schedule this at the end of the day. I like to call this sit and drool time, because you might just need to sit and drool. You need to allow yourself this space. This isn't easy. And there is no question about this, that while it is more difficult for the employee, it is also challenging for you. That's why I mentioned having it at the end of the day. Never pack an impossible conversation between 2 other meetings or a presentation. You need to make space for yourself to recenter. I'm sure, because I know a lot of MSP owners that say, I don't need that. I don't need that. I go into the next thing. Just sit and drool, really. No judgment here. You need to do this. Remember this when your management team also has to have impossible conversations. Let them have the space to sit and drool as well. Mental health is so important. I did a whole webinar before about mental health and how I was forced by having a breakdown to do this for myself, because I was like those MSPs I mentioned before. Give me more stress, give me more things to do. And then my body was like, no, you're done. So we all feel like we don't have time about it, but I did write a blog and made some videos on self-care in 5 minutes, because I know know you all can find 5 minutes. You can read more about them here. It even has a video of me yelling my stress out, which people, I guess, found really funny, and is, of course, our most seen video in the series. But there may be some helpful tips during your typical day to take some time out for yourself. So there's one more tool I want to share with you, and you can do this in workshops, company meetings, but as you can see, I always try to make a safe space to have employees critique how things are done or how I'm doing. But it's also wonderful to get all your employees together and make a safe space on what they would like to see different in the company. It may have to do with the culture, things you didn't realize were undercurrents. It could have to do with communication methods. It could be the senior team is assuming others know things that they don't. But it's hard to get that conversation started. I suggest that it's also fun to split the companies into groups of about 5 or 8 and give them a big piece of paper, lots of colorful Sharpies, and then they have them draw your company as a car. Tell them to make it as detailed as possible, and they're going to have to explain the reasons for the features that they gave. We were actually supposed to have our company retreat, but in New Orleans, right before I gave this presentation originally, and it was postponed. So this is a mock company car of Gozynta that you can see. And then you give them another piece of paper and have them draw your company as a car 5 years from now. This will show you so much. And again, have them explain why they drew what they did. Sometimes having these conversations through creative processes that aren't as direct as saying right to their manager, there's communication issues. We're not going as fast as we could because of this. When you're putting it into a drawing, it's less confrontational, maybe, easier and more fun. So I think I've packed a lot of tools in here for you in this session. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me. This QR code has a link to learn more about Gozynta and our products. There's white papers in here as well about from this session. So if you would like any of the tools in here, they will.
That was great. Thank you so much. I had to relive a few of those conversations that I've had as well, being both the giver and receiver of probably every example you gave there. It's not my favorite thing, but I know how critically important it is. So thank you for taking the time to go through some of the details there. I'm sure some people are going to have some questions, so they'll have your contact information available. We will look forward to seeing everybody that can make it out to Phoenix on the 27th, which you'll be giving this presentation. So with that, I will say thank you for everybody attending. Thank you again, Heather, for providing this information, and have a wonderful day on with the summit.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much.